Rachel Goldberg-Polin is a Jewish educator who became well known around the world as an advocate for the Israeli hostages held in Gaza, and particularly her own son, Hersh Goldberg-Polin, who, of course, was killed last year. And she joins us now on Unholy. Rachel Goldberg-Polin, it is very good to have you back with us.
Thank you for having me.
We wait now for news of a ceasefire deal that will involve a release of some of the hostages. As you watch that, the discussions, Benjamin Netanyahu flying to Washington, D.C., sitting with Donald Trump, and where, you know, one day goes into another, and then another, and then another, as we wait. How, from your very particular perspective, do you see all this?
I mean, it's hard for me to bifurcate and look at this objectively. Obviously, I have a tremendous amount of empathy and agony for the families that are these 50 families, just in indescribable misery. You know, I'm not a geopolitical strategist. I'm not a military tactician, but I do know how to read. And I feel like all these polls keep coming out saying what the Israeli population is feeling about the situation right now. And, you know, we have, in general, it seems somewhere around 20% of people who are saying, don't do a deal, don't do a deal, keep going, keep fighting. Okay, that's one opinion. And then you have this very kind of overwhelming opinion that is hovering right above 70% saying, stop this, no matter what, get everybody home. So, and then there's 5% that don't know. So now we're up to 95% of the population who are voicing their opinion. And there's 5% who are saying do a partial deal. So it's very strange because, again, I'm not a leader of a country, but my assumption would be that if only 5% of your country wants something to happen, if that thing seems to be what the trajectory is, I want to believe that there are things going on behind closed doors that we are not privy to and that are creating the movement to have other things happen. Because if it doesn't make sense, it doesn't, it's not logical. And so I'm very hopeful and optimistic that what we're hearing, and we've seen this before. I mean, we saw this less than 3 weeks ago when all of this choreographed production and theater took place. You know, I remember speaking to someone a few years ago, this woman who said, I don't watch reality TV. And I keep thinking of her because I think, well, she watches the news, and there's nothing that's more the epiphany, the like archetype of reality TV than what we watch in the news. And that to me, so I'm just praying that this is another example of we don't know what is going on in that room in Washington when the prime minister and the president are together.
You know, I look at you and you and John, you still have that sticker of 642 days. It really is unbelievable that we are at this point. But as you pointed out, the conversations, all of them are talking about a partial deal. I remember that we spoke in October of 2024, and you asked, what country will we be if we don't bring back the hostages? You used the image of a toothpaste. You said the toothpaste is out of the tube. You can't bring it back in. And we keep saying to ourselves, we can heal only when they come back. There's no question that they have to come back. The question I'm asking is, can we heal? Will we be able to heal?
I have to believe yes. And all signs point to yes. we have a myriad of opportunity to fix what we have. So many things that are broken. Now, on the one hand, that feels really ominous and like a humongous challenge. And on the other hand, it's a real opportunity. I have a dear old friend that told me that her mother used to walk into her room when her room got really messy, and her the the pinnacle of the mess was always on her desk. She would put all of her books and all of her papers and all of her clothing, and just everything was all over her desk, and her mother would lose her mind and come in and just sweep everything off the desk. Now, on the one hand, that is a very aggressive tactic, and on the other hand, she had a totally clean desk to start and to go through everything and to start over. And I think we as a nation, and really globally, I mean, even as a people, I would say, I would widen it. We are in an excruciating place, and I want to believe that that means we can now build up. But first we have to get this truck off of us. And that's, that was always the image that I felt while Hersh was still alive, being held, is that this truck was on my chest. So I could hardly move at all because I was afraid that if I shifted the wrong way, it would collapse my rib cage and kill me. And then Hersh and, the beautiful, we call them the beautiful six, who were the other five who were killed with him. The truck moved, but I'm still pinned under it. It's just not on my chest, but I still can't move. So I think in many ways, in varying degrees, everyone feels that way in the country. It just depends on where on your body is the truck. But the truck is present. And even in worldwide Jewry, it might just be holding you down by your hair. So maybe it's not viscerally painful, but you cannot move. And I do believe, I believe that we're going to get through this. I believe there is light ahead.
I mean, my question relates to that in a way, which is just what you've said and how we set that against what the public statements of the country are. The country's leadership is speaking very much as if Israel is currently extremely strong, having scattered its enemies, particularly Iran most recently. But I too have always been gripped by the observation you made to us, and which Yoni just quoted when you said to us back, I think it was in December 2023, that Israel will be kind of judged by this and how it treats its hostages and whether anybody is left behind. And so when you hear the two things side by side, or think about the two things, how should we think about this? Is Israel a stronger or weaker country now than it was on the 6th of October 2023?
Again, look, I'm not a geopolitical expert. I think there is no denying that we have had some tremendous military feats, not just Iran. I think that obviously what happened in Lebanon and partially what's happened in Syria and certainly what's happened in Gaza. I mean, people will spend reams and reams of paper, and historians will debate what happened and what took place in Gaza. But I don't know if we're stronger. I think we are definitely in a different place. I think we have diminished Hamas being the military threat that it was on October 6th. I think that's undeniable. And I think that was a huge goal of this war starting in October of 2023, in the end of October 2023. But I also think that at a certain point, the purpose of military pressure is to get to a place where you can have a diplomatic solution. And it feels, again, with my sort of novice viewpoint, that we're at that place. We have shown the world. We've shown ourselves. Okay, Iran, for now, you're over there. Okay. Hezbollah for now, and all of the leaders of all of these groups that have been so threatening to us for so many years, those people are not alive anymore. Now is the time to say, from a place of strength, come on, let's sit down and finish this up with a bow.
Everything here is happening excruciatingly slow. The last time hostages in a large group came out was February. And in that group, we saw Or Levy and we saw Eli Sharabi, who were both with Hersh. Eli, in an interview, said that he had been with Hersh only 3 days, but it was such a powerful impact. He had such a powerful impact on him that he wanted to meet with you and tell you. And the line that they quoted from Hersh that said to them, he who has the why will find the how. Is that something that we can ask you, that you can talk about? Does that bring comfort? Did that bring comfort?
Absolutely. Absolutely. First of all, there was so much. We sat down for over 2 hours with Or Levy, days after he got out of Gaza, and every single day I think about, there are sort of several things that I go through in my mind, and when you ask, does that bring you comfort? What's really challenging is that it's very difficult to experience comfort when you've lost a child. And I've had thousands of people now, thousands from all over the world, reach out who are bereaved parents, who talk about that specific dynamic, that it is different than losing other people. It's not a comparison. It's not making a, competition, but losing a child is such a unique and confusing experience. And to try to find comfort, at least I can only speak for myself. I feel that I'm 2 inches into a 1,000,000-mile journey that will last the rest of my life. I'm often saying, I was saying for a long time, I feel like I'm on another planet. I feel like I'm in another galaxy. And then I have this dear, beautiful friend, Zev, who is a psychotherapist, and he also is Haredi. And he said to me, and he's known me since I'm 22, which is only like 10 years ago. And he said to me, you keep saying you feel like you live on another planet. You keep saying you feel like you're in another galaxy. No, it's that part of you is in Olam Haba. Part of you is in the world to come. And all of a sudden, it was like a lightning bolt. Oh my gosh. It was so comforting to hear. It was so permissive. It was saying, of course you don't feel complete because part of you is not here. And when Or came back and told us, Hersh was quoting Viktor Frankl. He was quoting Man's Search for Meaning, and I had never read it before. And so, of course, I ran out and got this book, which I felt was sent from Hersh. And Eli Sharabi also said, it was this quote that every day after Hersh left them, he was with them for a few days, and he said to them, you guys, this is what we have to keep our eye on the prize. What is your why? Figure out your why. And for Or, Hersh knew that Or had a son, and he was saying, it's your son. You have to get back. So figure it out. And all of a sudden, I had this book given to me by this beautiful man, Or Levy, and Eli Sharabi, this other beautiful, wise man. And that has been so comforting. There's a tale in that book that I literally say to myself every single day, to the point where my girls are like, oh my gosh, don't tell us this story again, please. And you may know about it. It's called Death in Tehran. And it's a famous, sort of folk tale that has different iterations. There's one in Islam, there's one in ancient Mesopotamia, there's one in India, and we even have a piece of it in the Gemara in Sukkot. And the tale is very quick. It's just a king and his servant are walking in the king's garden, and they separate for a moment, and the servant comes running back to the king and says, Master, I just ran into death. Quick, give me your best horse so I can run away to Tehran so death doesn't get me. And the king says, of course, take my best horse. And he goes galloping away. And then the king's alone, and he bumps into Death in his garden. And he says, "Why did you scare my servant?" And Death said, "Oh, I didn't mean to frighten him. I was just surprised to see him here because I have an appointment with him tonight in Tehran." And for me, it's everything, because it's saying you cannot outrun your destiny. And that is very comforting to me. And the other thing that's very comforting is that I hate to break it to everybody, but nobody gets out of here alive. That is the way that this world works. Olam hazeh, it's the way the cookie crumbles. Nobody is getting out of here alive. And so, it's all these different ideas that lend themselves to keeping in mind one day at a time. I'm trying to walk myself through this very compromised place where I am, and I'm a different person. And I was thinking how when Christopher Reeves broke his back, he had to move through the world differently. And it would have been inappropriate and insensitive if people said, "Don't worry, you'll get better." He was fractured in a way that was always going to be different. And he found meaning and purpose and growth in his life, but it was different. And that's the challenge that I have, and that all of these bereaved families are grappling with, and not just here in Israel, but literally all over the world. I hear from people. And I think that it makes people very uncomfortable to hear it, but it's the truth.
I'm just lingering on the fact that somebody who said something that helped you was a Haredi therapist, somebody who is ultra-Orthodox.
Yes.
You mentioned the concept of the next world. When we had our first conversation, we did talk about your relationship with Jewish religious tradition with God, really, and how difficult that would be given the position you were in. And you talked about your dialogue with God and how sometimes you were very angry. I'm just wondering what your relationship is like now, I take it from what you just told us that you still draw great sort of sustenance from Jewish religious tradition, but this is an evolving relationship. So just tell us what you can about that.
Well, I say constantly, thank God I believe in God. Thank God I believe in God. Thank God I believe in God. I don't know how I would have gotten to where I am without God. And I don't even know I would have to go back and listen to it. I don't think that I was angry with God. I really haven't felt, that's not what I feel. What I feel is, and I say all the time, I don't say why, because I know there's a why. I actually know. Sometimes people say to me, "My gosh, where do you derive your faith?" And it's actually cheating, because it's not really faith. It's not like I don't say, "I have faith that this is a pen." I know this is a pen. I know there's God. And I know that there is a reason for all of this. I might not ever be privy to the why, but I know there's a why. My question is, what? What do you want me to do? Because I'll do it. I just need, give me more clues. Like when you're playing charades with a very little child, it's like, I'm going to need some more. Because I feel, and I've said this, and I think that people think that I'm this, I've gone bananas, but I am telling you that the most close that I've ever been to God, and the holiest moment of my life, was the moment that they told us that Hersh was gone. And I know that that's a very strange and macabre kind of statement, but it is the truth. And I even have said to John, I'm surprised that my face wasn't red afterwards, the way that they described that, and I think that's why part of me also died when Hersh died, because I came close to God, and you can't see God and live. I am constantly in a dialogue, and I think all of us are grappling with what is our idea of God. But I am thankful that I have that. I feel for people who feel that this is just all randomness. And I actually heard this incredible quote. Rav Yermi Stavitsky, who was Hersh's principal at his high school at Himmelfarb, was a student of Rav Amital. And he was talking about how he had a conversation with Rav Amital many years ago and asking him, how did you walk out of Auschwitz alone and still believe in God? How is it possible? And Rav Amital actually said, it's better than the alternative. Now, I don't feel that way, but I think it's an extremely powerful statement. And I understand what he's saying, because if you just think that things are just happening randomly and with no rhyme or reason, that is a very challenging way to go through life. It's not that it's not doable. I mean, millions and millions of people feel that way, and everything is legitimate to feel. But for me personally, I would not be able to make it without this very concrete anchoring foundation.
You and the case of Hersh managed to get a level of attention around the world that perhaps some of the other hostages and hostage families didn't have, for all kinds of reasons, partly because you're American born and you're fluency in English and so on. But I think one of the things that did it was the fact that very early on you spoke about your identification with mothers in Gaza. You imagined in a very powerful poem a woman like you, a mother like you in Gaza. At that point, obviously, Hersh was still alive. And I'm just wondering whether it's harder for you to maintain that identification, that kind of empathy now.
I really feel the same. If anything, I think that woman who I was talking to then has also lost her son. And I think that what brings people together are common bonds of love and common bonds of pain. And I think that I would like to think that there is a woman who is in that same otherworldliness that I'm in, where part of her is also in the world to come. And I think I have more in common with her than I have with some people who are extremely close to me, but thankfully haven't experienced that.
Just something about the dynamic inside Israel. Yoni and I have talked about it often on the podcast. It still surprises me the fact that hostage families are not spoken to with what I had always assumed would operate in the political sphere, which is a kind of tiptoeing around them, a sort of delicacy, a sensitivity that you couldn't sort of speak in disagreement with families of hostages. Instead, there's been something which has shocked me, which is a degree of sometimes, antagonistic, aggressive language directed at hostage families, even really abuse, you would have to say, rained on them. We I think Yoni last week mentioned on the podcast somebody saying somebody else, I don't care if you're a hostage in Gaza. This was just an exchange in a cafe. But we've seen scenes in in Knesset committees and so on. How has that come about, do you think? Because, like I say, it surprises me, because I thought even if people didn't mean it, even if they were paying lip service to it and it wasn't sincere, there would be a kind of taboo around being antagonistic with hostage families and released hostages. And yet it's not quite like that. How do you explain that?
I can only imagine that it's when someone's at their wit's end because they're frustrated, because as I was saying before, I think to varying degrees, the entire population of the entire country is trapped and has been trapped for so long. And we know, I have a friend who's a nurse, and she talks about how there are different ways that people express their pain. You know, there's the clenchers, there's the screamers, there's the criers, you know, there's the people who are swearing at at the people taking care of them. And I would like to give the benefit of the doubt that when people are saying and doing ugly things, that it's because there is some actual suffering on their part that's causing them to behave that way. I realize that's giving them the benefit of the doubt, because I don't want to think that we're someone who we don't recognize. And we've always prided ourselves on being a people that take care of each other. Look, we don't have to agree. We've all talked about this a million times already. We don't have to share the exact same philosophies and worldviews, but we have to be respectful, period. It's just the way it is. And I think we should be trying to understand each other. Look, I will also tell you that what was very painful for us is after Hersh was killed, you know, there are 68 members of this coalition, and my mother is so innocent and thinks the best of everyone. And I asked her this question. I said, how many people of the 68 members of the current governing coalition do you think reached out to us afterwards just with an emoji? So like, maybe you're not good with words, or maybe you're worried that you're going to get blamed with something, you know, but like, how about a heart? Or how about one word, tanchumim, which means condolences, out of the 68. And you know what my mother said? 68. And you know how many there were? One. There were 2 form letters and 1 WhatsApp message. And this is after we had met with almost everyone, met multiple times. And if you recall, our method was never to scream, never to yell. There were people who cried with us, who hugged us. And to this day, I've never heard from any of them. And that is really, to be honest with you, it's not that I'm hurt, it's that I'm worried. I'm concerned, because I don't know what that means. I don't think they hate me. I don't think they hate Hersh. I don't think they wanted Hersh dead. So it's concerning, because it's not proper behavior. It's not human decency, and it's not giving dignity to a family that really lost, you know, a humongous piece of their identity and their life.
Yeah.
When we talked in October 2024, you said then that the Prime Minister called you, but John said you had elected not to take the call. Have you spoken since? Has he tried to make contact since?
I believe that they tried to call during Shiva, and we just were not in a place where we could talk to anybody, honestly. And he did send, you know, I mean, everybody gets a letter when this type of tragedy befalls them. But we haven't talked to him. And that's not to say I don't know that he wouldn't. I don't know if we reached out. I don't know if he would or wouldn't. But we, at that time, it was not something we could bear.
I also remember from the Shiva that there were so many people there that it really did look like they'd, in a way, expected you to help them or guide them or shepherd them through what they were going through in a weird way. I think a lot of people look at you and look at John and expect, you know, you to tell them what to do, what they should be doing, how to go through this. Is that a burden? Do you know how to, you know, figure out how to carry that? Do you feel like you should carry that?
I wish I had the training and the wisdom to be able to provide that. I don't know that people are looking to us for that. And I definitely feel that I'm not equipped to to speak with authority on that. I can speak for what is helpful to me and what is not helpful to me. And I know that and I've learned so much in these, 321 days since burying Hersh. I have learned that when people tell me what I must feel, that is not helpful. When people grab me, not helpful. When people before every Shabbat or every Chag or every, birthday, anniversary tell me how I must be miserable because, not helpful. But I know it all comes from a good place. So I just have to kind of take a deep breath and understand everyone is in trauma and that word is overused. In fact, a therapist said to someone I know, stop saying you're in trauma. You are not in trauma. You know people who are in trauma, but you are not in trauma. But I think we're all in such a confusing desert of suffering that we're behaving not our best. And I think that is something. So for me, I have to practice being more understanding and forgiving that when people are doing that to me, they're not doing it to hurt me. No one would ever intentionally hurt me. And therefore, I have to just say, okay, I'll read these 86 messages telling me how miserable I'm going to be this Pesach, and then try to go into Pesach and not be miserable.
Can I go back to those 68 members of the governing coalition who only one or two or three sent any messages? What's your explanation for that? You said you were worried about it, and I just wonder whether you think it's possible that shame played a part, or guilt? Do you think it's possible that some of those people feel in some ways that they could have done more, should have done it sooner? Is it callousness? I just want to get a sense of where you think the answer to this puzzling thing may lie.
Well, I think that in general, we live in the Western world in a very litigious environment, and people are very afraid. I know in America, someone who accidentally, hit someone with their car and was advised, don't apologize. If you say you're sorry, it's admitting guilt. And he said, but I am sorry. I didn't mean to hit her with my car. And, I think that just pervades our culture now, that anyone ever saying, oh, I'm so sorry. And all the more so, I think, in the region where we live, it can be perceived as a weakness. And so I'm hoping that it was certainly a mistake. And I think that when we're coming up in the Jewish part of the year, where we're coming up on the month, well, first of all, we have the fast of Tammuz. The 17th of Tammuz is coming up on Sunday. And then we start this part of the calendar where we go toward the 9th of Av, which used to always be considered the saddest day in the Jewish year. I'm not sure that now has some other dates that can be in competition, but and then we enter the month of Elul before Rosh Hashanah, when we're trying to really do introspection, and especially people who feel that they want to be able to approach the master of the universe on the day of judgment, which is Rosh Hashanah. And you have to really go through and think, what have I done to my fellow human beings that I can't ask God to forgive me for? You can only ask God for forgiveness for things that you've done between you and this idea of God. And I keep thinking, what are those people going to do? Those 65 people who never just said condolences to someone whose son was stolen, maimed, starved, tortured, and bullet-ridden on day 328 and killed. And they never expressed condolences. I don't know how they're going to show up in shul on Yom Hadin. I really don't. And I want to believe that it is simply perhaps what you're suggesting, Jonathan, like a bit of discomfort of what could I have done? But I wasn't even looking for that. I really was not. I think, look, it takes a universe to kill a universe. I don't think this is one person. And I just think this was a real example of when we say the word Avera, which really means like you miss the mark. They missed the mark. They missed the mark.
I wonder when the hostages, God willing, will come home. A lot of it to do with the advocacy of hostage families, you included. Did you have time to think of what life will be like, what you and John will do after this?
I'm so hopeful that has to be what I worry about tomorrow. That they come home and we have so many opportunities to repair this fractured home of ours. And I think I'll have to spend some time very quiet, really listening to the universe to figure out where my feet are supposed to take me next. Which, by the way, is when I referred to the death in Tehran story and how there's a piece of it in the Gemara, in the Talmud, in Sukkot, the line, the punchline at the end of that is, your feet will always take you where you're supposed to be. And I know that my feet will take me where I'm supposed to be, but I really just have no concept right now. It's, you can't go to someone when they have an axe in their chest and say, so what's next? It's like, I can't, we are consumed by this. We are constantly, this is still our full-time job. I just got back last week from Washington, D.C. I mean, and we're like all of these hostage families. I mean, we can't move. We cannot move until we get these people back. And until the whole country, I also think these past 12 days, in the last 2 weeks, we've lost 12 soldiers. I mean, it doesn't matter if it's what the reason is. There's so much loss and so much suffering, and we need to get out from under this.
Just your mention of Washington puts me in mind of something particularly about your role these last 20 plus months, which is you see what's happening obviously in Israel where you live, but also in the Jewish diaspora. What do you think of how the two Jewish worlds, in a way, have gone through this period, and whether the result is, or in the process of that, do you feel these two worlds which you inhabit actually are closer together than they were, or further apart than they were?
Yes. Look, the truth is, I am really proud of the American Jewish community for being so open to the hostage families still. Even, last week I was there and I was actually talking to a hostage family that is Israeli, but they were there and they were saying, we come here because we feel so embraced and so respected and so cared for. And that is beautiful. And I do think that in so many ways, this has brought the diaspora, and specifically I'm talking about the American diaspora, but obviously we were in Australia in February in that community. Wow. their hearts bleed for what's happening half a world away. And on the other hand, they are all dealing with issues that we aren't dealing with. There's this virulent anti-Semitism that has gone crazy and manifests in different ways. And I see in these diaspora communities, they're circling the wagons, kind of trying to stay on the topic that's also closest to them, while realizing in their own backyard they have what to worry about. So, and that creates distance, because then we're not all focused on the same, Soviet Jewry when we were all focused on that. But I think the reality is that whether you're an American or a Brit or an Israeli, with all aspiring democracies, we have the possibility that the person who's going to be calling the shots is not the person that we chose. That is what happens in aspiring democracies. And yet we can still be proud of who we are in the countries we live in. Mark Twain had that famous quote about saying patriotism is supporting your country all the time and supporting your government when it deserves it. And I think it's a beautiful quote, because it gives us permission to say, I am a patriot. I am a Zionist. I'm a Brit. I'm an American. And maybe I didn't choose, the last administration, or maybe I didn't choose this administration. It doesn't matter. It's be proud of who you are and what you're aiming for. And the aim is to have true democracy. And I think we make the mistake of saying that we live in democracies. I think we live in aspiring democracies.
Yeah, that does make a lot of sense. Rachel Goldberg-Polin, you make us always smarter about life and about Jewish life. And thank you so much for talking to us today.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Rachel, very much indeed. Again, our thanks to you. And
let's just pray that in these next few days, we get our 50 cherished hostages home, we get our brave soldiers back in safety and peace, and that we really start this, for all of Klal Yisrael, this resilience, recovery, healing, and comfort that we are all so thirsty for.
Amen to that. Amen.